Shared happiness is said to be the best only when shared. Now, I know the real quote does not go like this, but we live in a mainstream world, and a mainstream means control, so we live in a world of control that people are finally waking up to. Happiness is only real when shared. So, therefore, there is a concept named shared happiness. Shared happiness exists only in a community. What is a community? Well, a community is only a place where there is communion, because people who live together but don't have anything related to them is more like a prison, because there you have prisoners, and well, they don't have necessarily a similar background. They might, but they don't have a community because they're not bond together. They are only using the others as a survival tool, because a gang is technically a survival tool, because they are letting themselves way too controlled by their beliefs and their separation illusions. So the point about this world, in order to rule humanity, you need to simply divide. Division is created through lies in the easiest way, because when you create lies, it means you have reversed engineered the truth. When you reverse the truth, the point is you teach people to live in a lie, to live in reverse. And to live in reverse, well, live becomes evil, right? L-I-V-E becomes E-V-I-L. When you live in reverse, the point is you will do the same as in this society. You will do literally everything against you. Your intuition will tell you not to do something, but you will do it because you have taken the karma of your parents. Your purpose is to not fall for that, but to simply erase that, to simply become better than that, right? So the point about this is you have to transcend the karma that you have from your ancestors, from your parents. So, in order to simply transcend that, well, the problem is you can only transcend that by simply allowing it to be released. This is done in multiple ways, usually by going through that without basically putting any judgment on it. It is kind of the easier way of doing things. Now, happiness is basically a poison, because if not used correctly, it will become poison. Now let us see why. When it comes to ignorant people, they only act impulsively. So they don't have an awareness, because ignorance means being away, being separated from your awareness. That is why you see people stuck to their phone and they don't see any poles, or literally they bump into things because they don't have any awareness. At the same time, you see people who are toxic. They are not aware of the emotional waste they are letting around, of the hatred and the negativity they are triggering into people. At the same time, they are good teachers because they teach you how important it is to not let yourself be swallowed by emotions. So, in ignorant people, happiness is basically a poison because it will end up as a drug. Because ignorant people are also separated from their emotions, because emotions come from awareness. If you are separated from your awareness, you don't want emotions and you want to be a shallow person, because in shallowness there is no emotion, and with no emotion there is also no responsibility. But emotions are all around you. It's just that you're numbing yourself down sufficiently so that you don't feel that those emotions are flowing through you, because in ignorance you're running away from the responsibility of making yourself a better life. So happiness becomes a drug to people who are ignorant because you can't live outside of your emotions. Everything within you will want to vibrate because ignorance equals death. It's basically like a death because emotion is vibration. If you want to move yourself from vibration, well, that means stagnancy. Well, the same thing as what the concept of death presents. Happiness, on the other side, can be a poison because when it comes to narcissists, and the, let's call it the darker spectrum of the psychology, if you want to control people, you can't allow them to be happy because happy people are free, and obviously freedom is the opposite of control. You can't control people towards freedom. That is basically the principle, the underlying principle of the so-called democracy. Democracy is the same thing as, well, monarchy. In monarchy, you have an oligarchy, right? You have the monarch, or theoretically, the only one who rules, but there are also the ones who are around. So, in a true monarchy, there are also the advisors, right? So, ultimately, there is a little group of people who rule the country, which is technically an oligarchy. Now, in an oligarchy, the difference is they all have kind of the same rights. And, well, in order to be a secret society to rule humanity, you have to be basically an oligarchy, because there no one has any superiority. They all have the same pains and they all have the same apathy, and they basically want the same thing. There is no such thing as religion, there is no such thing as that, because they know that in order to rule humanity, you need to have communion within you, so that you can function as a whole. But when you're ignorant and you function as a whole, you kind of function as a hive mind of your own egos. So the point is, when you want to rule other people, happiness is forbidden. Just like in this world, real happiness is forbidden, because ultimately you want to feel emotions. Well, you have to consume something. You have to consume porn, you have to consume things which keep you in the lower frequencies, right? You have to consume greed, you have to consume fear, especially fear. You have to consume sexuality in the lower state, right? And give in to your impulses, because if you give in to your impulses, you're easy to rule by the NGOs, right? Because when you are ruled by impulsive sexuality, you will have all the possible insecurities. So that is how it is easy to be catalogued as gay or as whatever that can be easily used as a tool to rule you. So this society is all about control, because if this society was about your health, it wouldn't have costed you such a fortune. We all have the technology to allow health to be, something very good. But the point is, if you want to truly rule people, even from a spiritual standpoint, you have to let them, or even push them towards living self-destructively, because the more you live, the wiser you become. So you become more accustomed to the cycles of life. Therefore, in later cycles of life, you will become simply wiser, so harder to stop with these illusions of the society. But the less you live, you will only live those impulsive parts, so you will simply perish in impulsiveness and in ignorance, which creates a lot of karma, which means that you will come back with those same impulses. Think about the history of our land. It's been 1000 years of complete suppression because of ignorance and obviously of Christianity. Now we live in a world of technology. We have proven there is no God beyond the so-called sky, which is nothing else than a visual illusion. But at the same time, one can also say a thing. The sky is blue because the light spectrum of the sun is blue. If we were on a green spectrum star, or technically a star that emits green light, the sky most likely would have been green. Don't forget that there are also visual effects occurring because of the Earth's atmosphere. So when it comes to life as is, the point is very simple. If you want to rule, higher emotions are forbidden, because if you allow someone to experience higher emotions, they become more in tune with their body. If they become more in tune with their body, Kundalini slowly starts occurring, so they will start waking up. The point is, you don't want that if you want to rule humanity. You want them to simply live self-destructively, like you see it nowadays. Drink your life, smoke your life, go drugs, do literally everything, die in a prison, die alone, because these are all huge karma, right? When you come back, you will be influenced again by these, because these will be cycles, right? So the more influenced you are by this, the harder it will be in further lives, up to a certain moment, but it will be the harder to simply step out of those. So you'll come back into a life where you'll have to do the same thing. That is why you live in a main frame. Don't forget, a main frame is still a frame, and a frame is a rigid structure. So shared happiness only occurs in a community. But to rule people, people must not be put in communities. They must be put in mental prisons. And that's why you have gays fighting so-called heterosexuals. That's why you have black people fighting white people. While society does nothing else than simply arbitrate them. How it does? Well, Black Lives Matter. Do you think black lives actually matter in this history? Do you think any person has done anything good for black people? But do you think something specific has to be done for a part of society? No, you have to do something for the collective good. Because people don't understand the most important principle that, well, let's say the left side will always teach, right? Especially if it's taught in purity, right? Because if it is taught through wisdom and people realize it, it is hard to stop. So the um, socialists, right, in social Romania and, well, in the social wing, they would teach you that ultimately the well-being of the individual is the highest detriment of the well-being, or towards the well-being of the collective. What we have billionaires, right? So what is that? Those are nothing else than, well, personal well-being. Are they detrimental to the well-being of the collective? Well, certainly, because money is limited. The more you gain, you will always gain more money, even if you gain it like through your own talents and gifts. The more you gain, you will always become, richer to the detriment of other people, more or less. That is why detriments like this occur when you just accumulate wealth, just like these billionaires are doing. And they're not giving much back. They're just accumulating more and more. Because the more you keep people in poverty, the more, the happier they will be, right? The billionaires will be, or those basically who rule the world, because these billionaires that we see on television, they're nothing else than front pages, as I call them, right? They are the pictures on the front page. You actually have to read the newspaper to see and find out the real things, or, well, basically what's written. It's the same with societies, right? Hidden societies always put some people out, but there is a conglomerate of people doing the, shadow work, right? The ones who stay in the shadow. Shared happiness is bad because, well, technically, it is the poison of people who want to rule, right? Those who rule simply have to create division, because division is basically the greatest illusion. And when this starts dispelling, those who want to rule become a little shaky, because people are waking up. Why do you think all these mandatory things are being done? People and specialists have been saying about all these mandatory actions that they are simply worthless, right? They don't prevent any spreading of a disease. You don't know how this disease simply appeared. It was obviously engineered and spread strategically, and, well, it kind of popped up, because you can't have a disease popping out everywhere. And there are still things that say, right, Event 201 or whatever it was called. And in 2017, Europe actually bought a lot of vaccines towards a so-called COVID. And let's not forget, before the outbreak appeared, there was that, global preparation for a pandemic, right? Event 201. What if a global pandemic would appear in December, January, right? February? You could see even Bill Gates talking about that, because they were strategically preparing the people for that, right? And then you also have the movie Songbird or something like that, which basically is another predictive programming. So as you can see, this whole society is all about control. If it is about control, then it's definitely not about your happiness, because, as I said, shared happiness is a bliss, right? It's a bliss for the masses. But if you want to rule the masses, you cannot allow that. So it's only technically a poison to those who want to rule, because happiness allows people to become more pleasant. It allows people to accept love. And the point is, love creates a world that they cannot control, because love means communion. And communion means people who simply put aside their ego, right? The ego will always exist, but as long as you don't take it into account, as long as you don't identify with it, you will simply be immune to separation, because you know that everything is one and one is everything. Now, I'm not diving into the flow of one, as I call it, because not everything is one. You are part of one. You are not one. All this being said, you are appreciated. Take care. Per Engine Board signing out.